Good morning, good afternoon. I'm your host, Patrick Post with VPI, and we really appreciate you joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we're looking forward to delivering a real interactive, I think delightful session you'll enjoy. It's a different take on a typical webcast. It's kind of an interactive Q&A, which has worked really well in the past, and we've gotten great feedback on. So I think you're in for a special treat. Today's topic is customer experience, contact center business intelligence and analytics. And I'm pleased to be joined by experts in this area. Richard Snow, he's the VP and Research Director of Ventana Research. He leads their contact center and business intelligence research practice. And he's got, obviously, as you can see on the screen, a wealth of experience working not only in IT services, but contact center with some top companies like eLoyalty, Pricewaterhouse, Semler, and Valora. I'm also joined by my colleague, Greg Cummings from VPI. He's our Director of Solutions Consulting and also has a wide range of experience and in-depth broad experience managing contact centers as Director of Operations. He was also in charge of quality assurance, workforce optimization, and reporting as well. So has a wealth of experience, and I think you'll find them to be very helpful resources, not only today but going forward in the future. Just a little bit about VPI before we get started today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question dialog box at any time. There's a question dialog box, and we've already gotten several great questions, so we appreciate that. But before we get started here, about VPI, we've been in business for over 20 years. We're headquartered in Southern California, and one of the fastest growing contact center workforce optimization providers in this space. We recently added a business intelligence module that really pulls together all the metrics and information within your contact center into a single location and allows you to publish views to each of the various lines, agents, supervisors, managers, executives, and so forth, so they can consume and see the data they need and get everyone on the same page. We have more than 1,000 customers globally, and we were recently ranked highest in customer assurance by Ventana Research. They do a very comprehensive value index on the workforce optimization market. And won't get into too much detail here, but if you'd like to download the executive summary of the report, you can do so on our website, vpi-corp.com. So now, at this point, we'd like to get into the Q&A, and we got so many great questions, so I kind of compiled all the questions and put the top 7 questions kind of together. I gave Richard and Greg some homework to do, if you will. So then they came back to me with some research and some things that they'd like to show. So we put them together into a presentation. The presentation will also be available. We'll send you the link to that as well. So we're recording the session, and we also have the slides if you'd like to review them at a later time. So at this point, we'll get into the first question. This was kind of one of the more popular questions. Why should we deploy a BI and analytics solution in our contact center? And I'll pass it over to Richard first.
Thanks, Patrick, and hi to everyone. You may quickly gather that I'm actually based here in England, so excuse my accent, but I hope you can all understand me. And as Patrick says, I've been in the contact center customer experience market now for more years than I'm going to admit to, but the things I've seen change the most in the last 25 years is a big focus on customer engagement. And so during last year, we ran a benchmark into what we called next generation customer engagement. And one of the things we asked our respondents, which were heads of contact centers, heads of customer service, and other people involved with customer engagement. We asked them the technologies that they felt would impact customer engagement the most. And what you could see is that almost top two equal are mobile technologies and analytics. Mobile because, like everybody, we're all on the move. We all haven't got enough time. So we need to access systems, messaging systems, information while on the move. So we won't be going too much into that. But almost equal top was analytics as a technology. And so we looked on the next slide at what kinds of analytics companies were finding were most important. And of course, not surprisingly to me, but perhaps another shift really in the marketplace is this focus on customer engagement means that companies such as yourself are now really looking for a view of a customer, to really understand customers. And so customer analytics BI has really come out as the top priority analytics system. And second in was the contact center. The reason being, of course, is that they're very closely connected. I'm sure your contact centers, they're responsible for engaging with lots of customers. So it's equally true that you need that view of the customer, what sometimes is called the 360-degree view of the customer, but also understanding contact center operations. So we did a little
real quick. We got some great questions coming in already. Thank you. This is related kind of to the top two. So some of our other departments are using a BI tool. What is the difference between a customer experience or a contact center BI and analytics tool versus something more generic?
Good question. I will touch on that a little later. But in response, what you can see is analytics BI systems been around a long time. There's some well-known vendors out there. And the thing about it is that their products are not specific. They really allow you to go and build analysis of data. And you really need quite a deep understanding of the tools, the kind of analytics process, and the data. And so I would say the big difference is, what we're seeing is that specific customer engagement, customer analytics really focus on those points. They really focus on being set up to actually get that analysis of customers. And one thing in particular, which I'll often come back to, is understanding and getting analysis of customer engagement, the channels that customers use, the type of interactions they have. And so the big difference, I really think, is that focus. And we'll look at some of the other more detailed differences as we move on.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Greg, is there anything you'd like to add to that in response to that question?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think Richard answered it perfectly. Is that, the legacy kind of business intelligence platforms and some of the ones that have been around for a long time are not necessarily focused on the contact center industry needs. And so when you kind of look to step into that realm and enhance the contact center, you really need a tool set that's going to allow you to accomplish your specific goals and tasks with minimal, outside resources or a lot of internal resources to work on it. So, yeah, Richard answered it perfect, and I know we're going to be touching on that consistently throughout this presentation. But great question, and keep them coming in, everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for the great question. All right, one more question we have. I'll put this up to you. Does the VPI solution require the VPI call recording? It could work on top of other recording systems.
Oh, that's a great question, Patrick, and thank you to whoever asked it. It does not, right? So the VPI platform is modular in nature and does not require our foundational call recording in order to accomplish a lot of these goals and tasks that we're going to be talking about. So it is not a requirement. We can stand up and have stood up our solution in customer environments where we've not been doing the call recording, where the need was really for the analytics side of the understanding and getting something to help improve that process. and we have a great solution for that. So it does not require the call recording, but you can still take full advantage of all our business analytics components.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. All right, Richard.
Okay, well, I said we'd dig a little deeper into the differences. So one of the things we asked in the same research is what actual tools companies such as yourself was using. And perhaps not surprisingly, still a lot of you out there using spreadsheets. A lot of you out there using these generic enterprise BI tools. But what we specifically found was that, and they applied particularly to spreadsheets, but slightly smaller percentage find the same thing with BI tools, that it's difficult to produce accurate and timely customer analytics and metrics. Now, again, we'll see a bit more of this later, but the most important thing, or one of the important things about customer analytics and BI is that it needs to be in real or near real time. I mean, your customers are engaging with you in real time. So you need that information as quickly as you can to provide it with people. So that's why there's about a quarter of the companies that responded to us have been looking at the specialist or dedicated customer analytics systems, simply because they can digest that data, ingest that data as it's happening, produce the analysis, and provide it to those people who need it, in that real or near real time. And so again, if we take another step down in the detail, we see that some big drivers, coming back to it, if you like, the original question, why now? And we've seen that on top of those companies that already have looked at specialist deployed, specialist system, another almost just over a quarter of companies actually looking to change. And the reasons they said they were going to change are quite diverse, but it really does come back to this focus on the customer. 63% to improve the customer experience, to make sure customers are happy after every engagement or during every engagement. To improve that customer service strategy, how are we going to differentiate our service strategy, your service strategy from other companies? And having that analysis to show how you're doing is an important first step on that. But again, improve the outcome of interactions. One of my favorite, most common things is, we want to improve the outcome, and that outcome has to be from the customer and the company's perspective. So yes, it could be I've solved that customer's issue, I've given them the information they want, but I actually want to make sure that I'm actually getting a business benefit out of it. So a lot of drivers for change, but that big driver for change now is understanding customers so you can improve the experience and customer service.
That's awesome, Richard. I love to see that, right? It's really all about the customer. I know there's a balancing act a lot of times that we deal with in contact centers, is kind of balancing customer experience with operational efficiencies and costs, right? So I love seeing that there's more of a focus on the customer experience, but with it keeping an eye, if you will, on those efficiencies as well. So at this point, Greg, I'll turn it over to you to get your take on that first question.
No, it's great. And kind of building on top of that is, really the need for business intelligence and contact center. And a lot of that is driven around the consolidation of data, being able to easily consume it, and have a platform that's moving with the organization and the way technology is progressing. So what you're looking at here, everyone, is kind of how you can imagine and envision, right, what is my tool that's going to give me that unified dashboard? It's going to take me away from a spreadsheet, right, that takes a lot of time to create and is very, right, error-prone and it's expensive, right? How can I make a more mobile view? How can I make a more real-time view that I can share within an organization when you can start to consolidate the data into a contact center business intelligence tool, create unified dashboards, and as you can see, take your eyes around the outside of this slide and look at the various platforms that are being integrated into a single solution and that are giving you visibility, right? My dialer calls, my CRM performance, right? How many new orders, or what's my first contact resolution rates, right? My quality management, my survey, my ACD or telephony platform, our service levels, our wrap times. How's my speech analytics engine processing my calls? And when I can gain this level of visibility and have this in a near real-time state and be able to monitor and then be proactive, right? And that's one of the things I've talked to Richard and Patrick about and a lot of people in the industry. We want to get management, supervisors back to being proactive and being mobile and being able to drive change, right, all the way down to the agent level and not have it, right, delayed in a lot of these processes that have to be put in place in order to make any kind of incremental change. Visibility allows you to do that, and breaking down those silos, data consolidation. This is really the future, and this is where we're driving towards. And then also, right,
real quick,
yeah.
Before you get too much further, there's a good question that just came in around the speech analytics piece of this, and it says, we're considering deploying speech analytics to analyze our calls. What advice could you give us?
That's a great question. And I think the first thing I always recommend to my customers, and I do a lot of this kind of pre-solution sales consulting with my customer base, is make sure you have very clearly defined objectives. And I think that's where a lot of customers, right, kind of maybe don't spend enough time, is you want to make sure that you're going into a speech engagement with clear objectives. You might always, everyone has some objectives. We want to find, right, what our customers are saying that we're not getting from other data sources. But really, you want to kind of break that out a little deeper. And I like to use the analogy, you want to create an outline, right? What's that outline that says, we want to accomplish improvement in customer satisfaction? Okay, what are the drivers there, right, and outline those. We want to increase, you know, our mean time to restore in a support center, or our first contact resolution, right, in order processing or sales center, or any kind of customer engagement center, right? So what are the objectives that are going to help you drive there? So if you create a clearly defined outline, that's really going to help you stay on track and stay on focus. And then also along with that, I highly recommend doing an audit, utilizing your speech platform and your speech vendor to do an audit of the environment. Get the experts involved, right? There are organizations there, and VPI is one of them, that can bring in a team of experts and help you through an audit process that's really going to start to align your goals and objectives to really what's actually happening in the contact center through that audit process, and see if there's any alignment. And if there's misalignment, start to bring some of those things together, right, and overcome some of those gaps and challenges. Jumping right into speech and deploying speech, right, can be a very costly process, and it can be sometimes, you know, not give you the results that you were expecting. So having clearly defined objectives and then also doing an audit up front is going to help you be successful in that deployment. And speech is a great product when used the right way and when it's wrapped around those core objectives as an organization that you're trying to solve. So great question.
Great, thanks, Greg. Richard, do you have anything you'd like to add on top of that?
Yeah, I take a slightly different perspective, because this is a question that I ask lots of contact center managers when they tell me they've deployed speech analytics, or even to the same extent with text analytics. So I'm asking them, you know, the things, you know, advice about for other people who have done it, and perhaps slightly controversial and perhaps not quite in a VPI marketing message, but a lot of people tell me you need to have a kind of step of faith, because as Greg said, implementing speech analytics is complicated, and there's a lot of things you can do about it. So the message I get is the first thing you want to do is exactly what Greg said. You want to understand what people are saying. You know, if you can take all the calls that your customers have, you know, ever had with you, and understand, you know, and get an analysis of what they actually said, that's really going to give you a great picture of your products, your services, your company, how you do things, you know. So one of the key things is to look to see, you know, for tools that can give you that insight. And once you kind of start getting those insights, you'll actually, I think, begin to find, deeper and perhaps more complex uses. But most people tell me the place to start is actually just having that basic, in a sense, a word map or phrase map of what your customers have said, because that helps you to guide you to next steps. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, guys. We've got some awesome questions coming in here. So I'll fire this one off to Greg. Is the dashboard supported by data in your cloud, or can it be warehoused at no additional cost in our warehouse via ODBC capabilities?
It's a great question, and it can be warehoused at no additional cost within our platform. We can do multiple different data collection methods. So for the folks on the phone that understand that ODBC connection, that acronym, yes, we can support that. We can also support manual imports. We can do multiple different methods for data collection utilizing APIs. So there's a lot of ways, right? We're very fluid in our ability to adapt to a customer's environment, and any vendor should be, right? Being able to collect data is not as complicated as it sounds, right? There are sources where data is stored. Being able to bring in that data from wherever that source resides is not a difficult task. And I don't want customers to kind of think that, oh, it's a 6-month or 12-month project and it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Really, at the end of the day, when you distill it down, the data is available. Collecting the data, right, from that source that it resides in is not a difficult process. There's multiple ways to get that done. And as long as you have the objectives of what you're doing with that data, right, then that process becomes very easy, and then you can expect the outcomes that you're trying to drive towards. So great question. And yes, the data does reside at no additional cost, and there shouldn't be, right? That's the whole point, is to bring in the data and give you tools that you can consume it and drive change within the organization. A lot of the change that Richard was talking about in the previous slides.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Just a couple more questions about the tool itself. Are you currently deploying this in a mobile environment? Do you see the need? And how would this work? Would it be valuable for startup call centers?
Yes, I'll answer the second question first. I think it would be extremely valuable in a startup contact center, because that's the contact center where you need as much oversight as possible, right? A startup contact center is going to go through growing pains, and I've been with the startup and worked to build a technology stack from the ground up, and I know what those growing pains are. And I think Richard could probably attest to, hundreds of stories he's heard about the same thing. So I think the analytics and the understanding of the data at that initial stages and getting the early adoption, what it's going to do is also get everyone accustomed to a standard process and understanding of looking at the data from the very beginning, right? And it's, it's that teaching old dog new tricks kind of thing. You want to start it early, right? So you've got broad adoption throughout the organization. So I would highly recommend it for a startup. And then, Patrick, say the first question again. I just want to make sure I answer that.
Yeah. Are you currently deploying this in a mobile environment? Do you see the need?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, the mobile environment. I do see the need, right? Because I think I touched on this previously. I want to get supervisors back to being mobile and managers back to being mobile. Let's get them out from behind the cubicle where they're answering IM messages and emails and running reports manually. Let's get them back on the floor. Let's get them re-engaged, talking to the staff, right, engaging and helping. And when you can get them mobile, when you can put these tools in their, in the palm of their hand in an iPad mini, and they can put in their back pocket and kind of be out with the team, helping and educating and fostering and mentoring. Those are the things that we really want supervisors, managers, right, our organization to accomplish. So mobile is everywhere. I bet everyone right now on the phone probably has their mobile device no more than 6 to 12 inches from them. And that's just the nature of society today. So mobile is the trend, it is the platform, and it's definitely a real requirement. It's something that everyone should be looking towards.
Richard, any thoughts on the need for mobile, managing, mobilely?
Yeah, everybody uses smart mobile devices now, and I think what I always advise is you need to look at the two sides of the coin. I mean, you have your customers using mobile devices, and they want to contact you through their mobile device. So that's something you need to support. But what we've seen in our research is that because of drivers such as increasing customer satisfaction, increasing first contact resolution, that actually handling interactions is not so focused anymore on the contact center. it's actually become an enterprise issue. So if we want to drive up first contact resolution and somebody's asking you about, a marketing campaign you sent out, or if somebody's asking you how a product works, then you might want to think that rather than trying to train all the agents to handle all of those questions, you might want to think about ways that you could transfer those kind of calls through to what is often called back office or knowledge workers. Now, a lot of them are mobile, so you need to get a hold of them while they're mobile. You need to give them the information while they're mobile. So absolutely, it's the trend that's being driven by all of us using mobiles, and it's again something as part of my homework that I'll just touch on later.
Great, thank you. All right, so next question we have here, what are the key criteria for choosing a customer contact center BI system? And we'll start with you, Richard.
Okay, well, Patrick talked earlier about on that slide being rated as a hot vendor and right up there. We judge our vendors on in effect 7 different criteria, which is usability, functionality, and you can read the rest of the list. But in our research projects, we ask people such as yourselves, what is your priorities for when you're selecting a product or vendor? We use the same categories, and just in the last 18 months, then almost coming from nowhere has been usability, and that touches on mobility, but a lot of other things. It's really putting analytics in the hands of business users. Again, touching back on those technologies, the thing about a lot of BI tools, they were really in the hands of the business analysts and the IT people. Where you need customer information is with call center agents, contact center agents, with knowledge workers. So it being easy to use has jumped up to number 1, but we can't ignore the fact that functionality, the tools being able to do what you need them to do, is all high on the agenda. So if we take those, on the next slide, we can look at 5 factors that come out. And again, this is going to reflect some of the things that I've talked about, Craig's talked about, but this ease of use, having a dedicated tool that's easy to use, that can access that data, has some pre-packaged analysis around customers. So, you can easily get that into the hands of users. The second point is get that analysis, get that information into the hands of business users and get it to them, and on a device of their choice, which, it could be a desktop, it could be a mobile, it could be on a mobile phone. So you need to look for tools that have that capability. But if I was going to pick out one, and Greg's touched on this already, the biggest impact and the biggest thing we think you need to look at is a system that can access and ingest data sources. And I have an illustration of that in a minute, but it also needs to have quite a range of analytics capabilities, and a bit more detail on that, and support for innovative technologies. So if we quickly look at data on the next slide, Patrick, then you have an awful lot of data about customers, and you maybe haven't stopped to think about all of these data sources. I mean, we asked which data sources companies were using, and came up with 21 different data sources. Now you might look at that and get a bit picky that some of them, are similar, but this is what companies came up with. We asked what data sources, and this is the top 21 data sources. So an awful lot of data sources. Now I can tell you the average was 6. So although we have 21 potential data sources, the average number of companies that are using is 6. I don't want to really put too negative a slant on it. That means you're missing out on insights that you gain from 15 other sources. So Greg's point about being able to ingest data, and that answers the question, being able to get to that data and get it into your system. And one of the problems, of course, is that it comes in so many different formats, and that's another advantage of using a dedicated system. It can handle voice recordings, it can handle text, it can handle social media posts. And as you get down the list, increasingly you might need it to be able to handle things like video. So ingesting data sources, the more you can ingest, the simple rule for me is the more you can ingest, the better the insight, the better the decisions, the better the actions, and the happier customers are going to be. If we look again at a little more detail on the next slide about the capabilities, and I've already touched on this real time, and that came out as, you know, number one on first choices. But if we look at these, so with real time, having these advanced capabilities, having statistical capabilities, predictive capabilities, and then the visualization, then cumulatively, being at real time and having predictive. One of the things that's being developed by vendors is the ability to take past data, do analysis of it, and then set up algorithms to predict the future. And I put to most people this question, I mean, who wouldn't want to know what your customers are thinking about doing next? So predictive is becoming an important factor in choosing the system. And then I just want to finish again with
question just came in real quick, just on the real time. It says, how real time can the VPI system pull data from data sources? Greg, do you want to take that?
Sure, I'll take that, Patrick. And it's a great question for whoever asked it, so thank you. The real time is, you know, depending on the source, we can collect data in as near real time as the data is available. With a lot of the telephony platforms, data is available in real time. Like for anyone using an Avaya telephony platform who maybe is utilizing their recording components as well, Avaya has a component called a real-time socket connection, and that allows us to connect and bring in the data in real time. So a lot of your telephony platforms have available data in real time for showing calls in queue, longest call waiting, right? That data is then available. We collect it in that real-time state and then also, right, display it out in real time. Other sources that might be updating on a shorter interval, maybe as a CRM record is updated, right? Our collectors can read from those sources, and any collector you input should be able to read from those sources on the interval that the data is being updated so that it can be brought in. So you can do a lot of these things that Richard's talking about, right? Start to look at your real time, right? Advanced statistical, predictive analysis. These are critical, and you need to get that data, right? Gone are the days of, you know, day behind reports, week behind reports, month behind reports. You need to get in more near real time or real time whenever available, so you can start to do a lot of this analysis that we're talking about. So great question there.
Good, thanks a lot. All right. So Richard, sorry about that. Great question.
So one of the things we look at in the adoption of all technologies is how some of these innovative technologies are applicable. And when I looked at that from a customer analytics, contact center analytics perspective, then the two at the top of the list were collaboration and big data. One of the things that we'll look at it in more detail on this is the need to share that data. I mentioned earlier that handling interactions is increasingly becoming an enterprise issue. So one of the very important things to do is to share that customer information, and having some kind of tool that allows you to do that again in real or near real time. Getting information to an agent when they've just rung off the call is really not very good practice. So sharing that data and sharing it as quickly as possible is obviously key to companies. Then there's these two big words, big data. I could do 3 hours on big data, but in the essence, one of the things that we're looking at here, whether you call it a big data or not, is we have a lot of data. In my data slide, we have a lot of data. Greg's touched on it. Again, there's a lot of data you have about customers, and that's one of the essences of big data. But more key of big data are two things from our perspective. One is to process structured and unstructured data. So if you're going to analyze and get insights from call recordings or text data, that tends to come in tools which are called big data. But I don't want to label it big data. You need the tools to do that. And the other thing which is usually associated with big data is that predictive element. And they are, actually, as you can see from our research, they are still more important to people than even down at mobile technology. We do believe, you can see it's important to about 2/5 of companies, and it's of growing importance. But you do need to look at that two sides of it, which is how you're going to allow customers to engage with you on mobiles, and how you're going to provide information to your own employees on their mobiles, and bring the two together. So you have a customer on a mobile talking to somebody on a mobile, and the person they're talking to has got the information they want. And of course, another growing thing is to bring in social media, so that you can understand what your customers are not just saying to you directly, but what they're saying to you or about you on social media. So increasing use of technologies, but we're still finding at the moment from the research the most important things is sharing, collaboration, and being able to handle high volumes of structured and unstructured data.
Great, fantastic insights. Thanks, Richard. All right, so here's another question for you, Richard. What are the pitfalls to avoid?
Well, I'm starting off with saying is the biggest pitfall, I think, with you should start thinking about any software, analytics or whatever, is it needs to be adopted. And adoption is going to be driven by usability and functionality. It's hard to use, people won't use it. If it doesn't do what people want it to do, they won't use it. So to drive adoption, you need to really think about those two things, usability and functionality. But you need to look at, and I'm going to go back and then pick up on what Greg said about that audit. We call it the 3 Ws. You need to understand what data you have, what data you can access. I agree entirely. That's the first audit to do. Go and take that slide. How many of those 21 sources of data have you got? Can you access them? How can you access them? So really you need to start with that, what data. But then equally key, as Greg said, is what information do you want to get out of it? There's a massive data. You can get a lot of information out of it. But think about your priorities, think about your goals, and look for systems that can get the data and produce that information. Excuse me. But almost more important than those two, when you think about it, is systems that help you take action. I'm just writing another piece, and basically I've used the phrase which I use many times over, which is, metrics for metrics' sake and no value at all. You want metrics to drive action, drive decisions. So in a sense, turning that round, the pitfalls of not understanding the data, not understanding the information, and not taking action. So consider these three things.
There's more metrics in the call center, right, than probably any other place in the enterprise, right? So a lot of times we see like metrics overload, right, which you're alluding to. Make sure it's the key metrics you really care about measuring.
So I would say if you think 3 Ws, it should lead you to think very hard about the metrics and the analysis you want. Secondly, I think you have to make, because of this importance of data, it has to be a joint business and IT decision. I made the statement, and I think Greg and Patrick will probably support this, you want this analysis to be in the hands of business users. So a lot of people think, well, I can just drive that with business people. But data is the key. And you're going to need some IT skills, at least at the very beginning, to help you identify those sources and set up systems that can ingest that data. So we believe it has to be a joint business and IT division.
There's a good question on number 2 here. What role should business and IT play in selecting an analytics tool? What would you recommend? I'll field that to both of you guys.
Well, I could almost sum that up by answering that question, again, a great question, by going back to my 3 W's. And if I was really crude, I would say IT is going to tell you what data you've got. Business will tell you what information they need. And then you come together and say, well, how are we going to take action on it? Because it might involve both of you. So, really at a high level, that's what I'd see the roles. IT really giving that advice, that technical knowledge about how to get to that data. Business actually deciding, what information they want. And then what action tends to come down to being able to configure the system so that it produces alerts, dashboards, traffic lights and those kind of things. So I think that's how I would sort of briefly.
And Richard, I think you said it perfectly. I completely agree. It needs to be, I think, a joint business and IT decision, and IT should be there to provide guidance to help the business understand maybe some of the technical aspects or where data resides that they might not even be aware of, and to be there as a supporting partner, right? It really needs to be a collaborative approach, right, which was talked about earlier, right? Collaboration, and that's, again, a pitfall to avoid is, getting in the cycle where you have any, contention between organizations internally and getting everyone on board with the same mission, the same objective. IT can be very helpful because they understand the back end, they understand a lot of the processes, and can be very, an advocate for the business, and the business needs to do the same for IT. So it's got to be a joint decision. And really, like you said, go back to number 1, the 3 W's. What data, right? They're going to know where it is. What information do you want, right? And what action needs to be taken? What's the best method to get that data and support the underlying objectives that you're trying to drive for? So collaboration is key, and getting everyone engaged, right, to really make the best decision for the organization.
So here's another good question on that point. And maybe Greg, you want to just, I know this question is similar to this. Where BI gets expensive is creating the feeds from all the different disparate systems to an underlying data source. How do you avoid that upfront investment or minimize it? And also, how many standard APIs do you have that will be able to interface with the standard applications that are out there? And maybe I'll just jump ahead. Actually, here, that is the next question.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect timing.
What context systems can you integrate with and how? So just along the same lines as the question we got previously. So I'll let you take that one away.
Sure. No, thank you, Patrick. And it's a great question. So this kind of builds on, and this shows you some of the different data sources, right? And when we talk about data sources, Richard put up that slide that illustrated it perfectly from the research that's been done in the industry. 21 different business systems. On average, most customers are utilizing 6 business systems. There's a lot of other sources of data available. These are some of the common ones that are very easy to connect to, and then allow for the common business data to be brought in. You've got your communication platforms like your telephony system, your Avayas, your Cisco's, your ShoreTels, your Mitel platforms. You've got your CRM, ERP, or help desk, or collections applications, right? Salesforce, SAP, Oracle. These systems are where a lot of the critical data is being housed these days for the customers, and you need to be able to collect that in. You've got your survey platforms. You've got if you're in the trading center or the trading financial industry, right? What are those different sources from your, your hoot and hollers, right? Your different positions. You've got your radio, the public safety. These are all data sources that I know we've collectively talked about and we've connected to from a VPI perspective. But the vendor needs to be able to look at the source of data, be able to connect to it utilizing, again, either just a standard kind of out-of-the-box connector that's been built, or to utilize things like APIs. And the API should be an open REST API. In most cases, it's going to allow you to either have the customer configure it so they can send you the appropriate data, or even do a process by which you can push data back into their system. So being fluid is really that key, and I know I've said that a couple times now. But you have to take a look at it from, with open eyes that says, where is the source of data? What are the core objectives, right? Now let's go have our collaboration with the IT department, right? This builds on what we were just talking about in the pitfalls. The business knows where they want to collect data, right? There are objectives they want to drive to, and you've got a good collaborative approach with the IT department. They're going to help you to get that information and then bring it into, right, the solution that you're going to be utilizing to drive, right, the analytics component. So there are a wide range of sources, and always think broad. Think about, one thing that kind of struck me from the slide that Richard showed, I think it's maybe in the low 20% of people are actually collecting data from their workforce management system. And to me, that's some of the most critical data available, right, to measure outside of that individual application for workforce management. Right? That's when I see it should be in the top 6. Right? That should be number 2 in a lot of cases, because workforce management is so critical in understanding schedule adherence, understanding staffing requirements, forecasting. Right? There's so many components that really help and drive the contact center from a workforce management perspective. That data should not be siloed in any way. That data should be broadly communicated out to the organization. So connecting to different data sources and bringing it in, and your methods for collection are also very varied in that you can do straight database connections, or you can use different APIs that are available to collect that information. Great question, by the way. Yeah.
That's a great question. And I think that's one of the key differentiators between a customer experience or contact center BI system, right, is these kind of out-of-the-box pre-built connectors to all those systems. So you do minimize that upfront cost, and then, minimize the involvement that you need, to work with your IT team. Once this is integrated, then the business users basically have the tools to create the views that they want once the data is in there. So
exactly.
Appreciate that question. Point. All right, here's another one for Greg, kind of along, and Richard, you touched a lot about, the importance of usability, functionality. We're seeing that as also the #1 driver, is really just stability, again, for business users to take the metrics that are collected and show the data virtually any way they want to, and kind of drive, everyone towards the same goal. So I'll field this question to you, Greg. What level of expertise do we need to use your software?
And it's a wonderful, wonderful question. And I will answer this from the perspective of, I'm someone that used to be involved in training and development and professional services for a very long time, and a large background, or a long time background in that. So I understand training and development and how to look at applications to say, is this going to be something that we can easily adopt in an organization? And how do you structure programs? How do you look at software? And I know from our software perspective, it has to be easy to use. If it's not easy to use, and I know Richard's touched on this in previous slides and things he's been talking about as well, right? It becomes shelf software. And shelf software is not good for anyone. It's just a waste of money at the end of the day. So you have to have an easy to use and easy to customize solution, right, with minimal IT involvement after implementation, right? Something that can give you a large volume of pre-built metrics out of the box that you can just plug and play, right? Drop this on a dashboard, put this on a desktop ticker, use this in a report. You need drill-through capability starting at the visualization level. And I think Richard made a great point in the pitfalls component that he was talking to, is that don't let the visualizations kind of wow you, right? You need to be able to do more than that. So when you have drill-through access to select a component, right, that's visual in nature, and then be able to get down to the tabular data, or the more, right, the supporting data, that's also a critical component. And again, it speaks to ease of use. I can just step through a process, mobile access, because again, sitting in front of an application kind of ties me to my workstation. I need to get up and get going. Real-time and historical data is obviously critical. You need to have those ad hoc reporting and analysis tools to be able to take your dimensions of data and be able to, kind of turn that cube. And we like to kind of continue to turn that Rubik's Cube until you get kind of the data point that you're looking for and really want to analyze. And I like that Rubik's Cube analogy, because you're tweaking, you're constantly turning those custom reports that you're building, those custom data views that you're building, and you need that flexibility to be able to do that. You got to have robust roles-based security because the application can't be just for a few people. We want the application to be consumed by the agents. You want supervisors, managers, directors, all the way up to the executive level in the organization. Everyone has a vested interest in understanding how the business is performing. And if we silo that information into a small group of business analysts and they weekly send out reports via email or a PowerPoint, and it's reviewed by management only, and then some of it trickles down to the agent in a monthly review meeting, that's an ineffective process, and it's one that's been very common for a long time. So when you have robust roles-based security that you can allow an agent to know and see and measure their own performance, right, in an application with minimal impact, right, to their environment, that becomes a very powerful message. And you do that by publishing out dashboards and desktop tickers, and we've seen some of those components as we go through this presentation, and there's another example of an image there, right? But the sharing of the data, the ease of use, the flexibility of being able to publish out dashboard views and being able to publish out your reports, so everyone can start with some kind of a canvas that's 90% done, and then just kind of fill in some color here and there. That's really what's critical. So, it's got to be easy to use, and you should be able to just quickly adopt it, training and then ongoing, right, kind of videos and have help systems. But it can't become a system that just sits on the shelf and doesn't get utilized. Great question.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Yep. Yeah, great. Yeah, there's a question that came in. It's a good one. Is there a particular size of call center that these BI and analytics tools are best for? And they're on the smaller side on the contact center. Is there value there for a smaller contact center?
Sure, I'll take that question, Patrick. It's a great one. I don't think there is I only have 30 agents, I can't use this. It's too much for me. I don't think that's the right answer. The answer is, what are your objectives? What are your goals? You're trying to ultimately provide a level of customer satisfaction and a customer experience, right, that's world-class. When you put the right tools in place to support that, right, you're going to be able to meet that objective. Like we talked about earlier with the startup, the person who asked a question about can this be used in a startup call center, right? Same thing here is maybe a startup call center is going to be small, and they're going to grow over time. So you have to put the right processes and technology in place to be able to support that. So there really is not a minimum size, and there's definitely not a maximum size. I think the bigger you get, the more you need these types of tools. So when you're in that kind of lower end range of the agents, right, really just align your objectives. You're still going to get the same business value because you're ultimately driving towards that customer experience, right, and enhance kind of engagement with your agents on a regular basis.
Thank you, Greg. And I think one of the things we see on the lower end is maybe even just a data connector to the telephony system, right? They want better visibility into their Cisco or Avaya or whatever telephony system they're using, and they want to have real-time updates and tickers at the agent level so they can self-manage. So I think you could start at any level. One data connector, right, to the telephony system gives you tons of great calls and queues, service levels, talk times, wrap times, all that kind of stuff that allows supervisors and agents to self-manage more effectively. All right, so we'll address this question to Richard. What benefits can we expect? What benefits do you typically see for organizations deploying a customer experience BI solution?
And obviously that's something which I mentioned most people are interested in on the call because it helps build the business case. So if I remember, I talked earlier from my research about the drivers that people were talking about for adopting new systems. So of course we had two branches in our research. One was for the people that had were intending to deploy and those that had deployed. Again, excuse me. So very fortunately, this was the branch where we asked the question, what were the benefits for those that had deployed, that 28% that had deployed. And for those of you with good memories, and you can go back and check out the slides at your leisure and share with people, is that the people who've done it have got the benefits, that those people have got the drivers for change. So the most important thing, if you remember, was to improve the customer experience. That's about becoming more competitive and standing out from the crowd. And we had 55% of people telling us that having deployed these systems allowed them to improve the customer experience. But it has a number of other benefits. And I suppose I missed out on the top line there. The really important thing is that the average was 6 benefits. We had quite a long list, and the average came out at 6. And so companies are seeing really multiple benefits out of deploying these dedicated contact center customer BI and analytics tools. And so you get a better analysis of the business, even getting a better alignment across the organization. As I talked about, the interactions are now being handled across the organization to help drive up customer sat, help drive up FCR. So getting that better alignment is going to be easier when you have the analytics that tells you what's going on. And then certainly get better communications. And I think I'll just pick up on Greg's point and echo, improve productivity. I no doubt all of you that are involved with contacts will see and experience what I've seen over my years, which is that it is this critical balance between what we call efficiency and improving customer experience. So, if you talk an hour on every call to keep a customer happy, I think somebody will probably come down on you like a ton of bricks and say, that's all well and good, but we can't afford to do that. So there is this important balance, this important alignment to get between improving the experience and improving productivity of the contact center agents. And so it's really good to see that these kind of analytics are allowing companies to get that balance. So really quite ranging benefits and quite extensive. So it doesn't leave me any hesitation to, in a sense, finish off by saying that I highly recommend that you look at these systems. These kind of benefits, I think, are what most companies are looking for.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that, and appreciate all your inputs today. It's been fantastic. We have one more question, and we're at the top of the hour here for Greg. What's the typical ROI that customers are experiencing with these types of tools?
It's a great question, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I appreciate everyone for hanging in there. It's been a great audience, a lot of great questions today. So results you can typically expect are, looking at a reduction in your handle time of at least 10%. We know that translates to a hard cost. That's a great driver right there. A 5% agent adherence increase because you're giving them additional real-time access to their data so they know how they're performing. And anytime you can make an adherence improvement, again, that all drives to the operational efficiency and those key business drivers from workforce management and operations. From a customer experience perspective, and this is really where I like to focus, an increase in speed of answer by upwards of 30%, which is huge. Customers, nowadays, the generation, we don't like to wait. We want it now. We want it as quick as possible. So anytime you can improve that answer time is really going to drive, that customer experience and what they're expecting out of the system, And a 25% decrease in abandonment rate, which again, when we talk about, and Richard touched on these components, this kind of omni-channel and multiple ways to communicate. If someone is reaching out to you on the phone, they've probably tried the self-service. They've probably tried the IVR. They may have tried, a social platform. So by the time they call in, it's critical that we're handling that interaction to hopefully ensure that that customer experience is as high as possible if they were unsuccessful in other mechanisms for trying to resolve, or get an answer to a question. So if you can reduce that abandonment rate, you're just ensuring that when they do contact you, that touch point is as valuable as possible. Everyone likes revenue, 5% increase in sales, 5% increase in collections. Again, a lot of that is driven towards data visibility, understanding, right? The information that's available in a real-time, near real-time capacity, being able to consolidate that. The additional visibility are the drivers that are going to help push all these arrows in the right direction. And some of my, right, the key ones I really kind of call out here is that 5% increase in agent adherence, that 30% increase in speed of answer. I want customers being handled right away because I'm a customer myself in a lot of areas, right? And I know what that feels like. And then obviously a 5% increase in sales. So you can expect these results when you start to implement a tool like VPI. So there you go.
That's great, Greg. And you think about a 5% increase in adherence, right? That's like if you have 100 agents, that's like adding 5 more agents without hiring a single person, right? And then you have, the sales and collections. It's really a driver of this healthy competition that's created when agents and teams can see their metrics in real time on an individual level. So, again, thank you all for such a fun webinar, and hope you found it really valuable. We are on your team, so use us as resources. Connect with Richard and Greg and myself on LinkedIn, and we look forward to keeping in touch and developing a relationship, and hopefully being able to help you solve some of the challenges and issues that you face, and partner with you. So thanks a lot. We'll be sending you an email with the slides as well as the recorded presentation if you'd like to share with anyone else. So have a wonderful afternoon or evening or morning wherever you're at, and we'll be in touch shortly. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.